The Young and the Restless spoilers. The tension was palpable as Chance stood with Daniel in the room, both men staring at Heather's phone, which now seemed to hold the key to the unraveling mystery surrounding her death. Daniel had always known Heather's phone password. It had been a small piece of trust between them when things were good. But when Chance tried to unlock it, the password didn't work. "It's changed," Chance muttered, his brow furrowing. He glanced up at Daniel, suspicion laced in his gaze. "When did you last use this phone?" Daniel, visibly shaken but resolute, replied, "I haven't touched it since everything fell apart. I would never change it. Someone else must have." Chance's mind raced. If the password had been changed, it suggested that someone else had gained access to Heather's phone. But who, and why? After a few moments of silence, Daniel offered, "I know a way to get into it." Chance handed the phone over, and Daniel worked quickly. Within seconds, the lock screen disappeared, revealing a series of missed calls, unread messages, and an inbox filled with unread texts. The phone, now accessible, laid out its digital contents like a breadcrumb trail. One message, in particular, stood out. A draft never sent. It was addressed to Paul. "Help me," the message read. "Daniel has been hurting me. I don't feel safe around him. He's violent, and I don't know how much longer I can take it." Daniel's face drained of color. "That's not true," he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. I never hurt her." But the evidence was there, cold and unrelenting. Heather had composed the message, or at least it appeared that way. Alongside the text, there were calls that Daniel hadn't made, messages he hadn't sent, all weaving together a damning narrative. Chance took a step back, his expression hardened. "This doesn't look good for you, Daniel." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of fear and frustration. "It's not me. I didn't do this. Heather didn't send that message. Someone set me up. You have to believe me." But Chance's mind was focused elsewhere. The sequence of events, the evidence, the messages, everything appeared to lead back to Daniel. "Right now, what I believe doesn't matter," Chance said quietly. "What matters is that the phone tells a different story, and it's enough to paint you as the aggressor." Daniel's frustration boiled over. "This is all Sharon's doing," he shouted, his voice trembling with anger. "She's framing me. She's manipulating everything. She and Cameron. Don't you see? Heather didn't send that message. Sharon set it up, just like she set up everything else. You have to believe me." Chance's gaze flickered. He wasn't entirely convinced, but the evidence was piling up, and he had a job to do. "Daniel, I need you to leave," he said firmly. "This place is now a crime scene, and until we get..." Daniel's heart sank. He had been thrown out of his own home, the place where he had shared so many memories with Heather, now reduced to a crime scene filled with suspicion and betrayal. Chance motioned toward the door, his stance unyielding. "You'll stay at a hotel," Chance instructed. "I'll have the place sealed off, and we'll conduct a full investigation. But right now, you need to go. For your own sake." Daniel clenched his fists, feeling powerless. His daughter, Lucy, was standing just outside the door, oblivious to the turmoil swirling inside. How could he explain this to her? How could he tell her that their home was no longer theirs, that her father was being framed for a crime he didn't commit? As he exited the house with Lucy by his side, the weight of the situation crashed down on him. Heather was gone, and now the world believed that he had been the one to harm her. Sharon, with her calculated cunning and manipulations, had set this entire scenario in motion, and Daniel had no idea how to stop it. In the days that followed, Daniel and Lucy moved into a modest hotel room, their lives now suspended in uncertainty. Every day, Daniel's thoughts raced back to Heather's phone, the damning message, and the chilling realization that Sharon was pulling all the strings. It made sense. Sharon had always been clever, too clever, and her ties with Cameron only made her more dangerous. Cameron had always been a master manipulator, orchestrating chaos from behind the scenes, and now it seemed he had helped Sharon in weaving this intricate web of lies. Heather's phone, the calls, the messages, all of it had been meticulously planned to point the finger squarely at Daniel. But there was one question that haunted Daniel most of all. Would he be sent to prison? The evidence, though manufactured, was convincing. The authorities would see the messages, the calls, and the history of their relationship as more than enough to make a case against him. And despite his innocence, Daniel couldn't help but feel the walls closing in around him. He awaited his court date with growing dread. Every passing day felt like a step closer to a life behind bars, a future ripped away from him. He wondered if there was any way out of this nightmare, or if Sharon's scheme had been so perfectly executed that he was now doomed to take the fall. Despite everything, Daniel clung to a sliver of hope. He knew that the truth had a way of surfacing, and while Sharon had been smart, calculating every detail, even down to the sequence of calls and texts, there was always the chance that something had been overlooked. Maybe, just maybe, the cracks in Sharon's plan would begin to show, and he would find a way to prove his innocence before it was too late. For now, though, Daniel could only wait, the weight of the false accusations hanging over him like a storm cloud, darkening everything in its path. And all the while, Sharon walked free.